Hello, I'm Esther Gido-Ewart. It's Wednesday, September 14th. This is Africa 54.
Queen Elizabeth's coffin is now lying in state at Westminster Hall after being transported in a public procession from Buckingham Palace. Violent attacks in Ethiopia highlight growing ethnic tensions between the Oromo and Amhara that threaten to become a second front of fighting. And African models showcase their creativity and talent during Africa Fashion Week in New York.
The late Queen Elizabeth's coffin is now lying in state at Westminster, transported in a public procession from Buckingham Palace to the Houses of Parliament. The Queen's body was accompanied by a military parade and members of the royal family, including King Charles. Joining me live now from London with more on today's activities is Associated Press correspondent Philip Crowther. Good evening, Philip.
Good evening.
Describe to us the scene today and how members of the public paid their respects.
Well, it's changed somewhat, hasn't it? Look behind me. It's now relatively empty, bar the police officers here outside of Buckingham Palace. You can see the gates to the palace here from where the cortege exited a few hours ago. The Queen on top of that gun carriage, horse-drawn gun carriage. That casket was accompanied by King Charles III, by his siblings and his sons. That, of course, includes the heir to the throne, William, now the Prince of Wales, of course, after that title was bestowed on him after the death of his grandmother. Now, this is a place that was very, very silent indeed, similar to the way it sounds right now. It was silent when the casket drove by and when the king and his family members walked by. A lot of people here taking photos on their mobile phones, taking videos as well. And then there was also applause along this route that took Queen Elizabeth II from her home here in Buckingham Palace to Westminster Hall, where she is now lying in state. We have seen that scene as well in Edinburgh, when there was applause for the casket of Queen Elizabeth II once it had passed by. We heard that and saw that again here in London, outside of Buckingham Palace that you can see behind me, and along that route where thousands of people were able to pay their respects to Queen Elizabeth II, something that they are now also doing inside of Westminster Hall. Westminster Hall is inside of the Houses of Parliament. That's where the Queen is now lying in state for 4 days.
Philip, tell us how the death of the Queen has impacted her immediate family members.
Well, the most obvious impact is, of course, on King Charles III, who until the death of his mother was the Prince of Wales. Now he has a lot more responsibility on his shoulders, of course, and we have seen that over the last few days. He has visited Edinburgh, he has visited Belfast, he's still to visit Cardiff, the capital cities in the United Kingdom. And of course here in London also, he has to show these, he has to be in public many times during the day. This is a man, of course, who lost his mother a few days ago, a very difficult time for the king right now, taking on these huge responsibilities. Of course, he has had a long time to prepare for this, having known for decades, of course, that he was going to be the king eventually. Now, when you look at the other family members as well, something that the British public, I think, is very happy to see right now during this period of mourning appears to be that the two sons of the King, William and Harry, are seen in public together. They both marched behind the casket of their grandmother together as well today. You know, there's been a bit of estrangement for Harry, who is now living in the United States instead of here in the United Kingdom. That is one thing that we have been able to see here in public, something that came upon this family after the death of Queen Elizabeth II.
Philip, thank you so much for your excellent reporting. Our thanks to Associated Press correspondent Philip Crowther, reporting live for us from London. As Africa reflects on the legacy of Britain's Queen Elizabeth II, Kenyans remember how a princess visiting the country in 1952 left as a queen. Analysts note how Elizabeth helped steer the end of Britain's empire and exploitative colonial rule. But while relations were repaired and improved under the monarch, colonialism left lasting wounds. Juma Majanga reports from Nairobi.
She became a queen while on a visit to Kenya and went on to be the last colonial monarch for Africa. Her accession to the throne came as African colonies clamored for independence. Queen Elizabeth II had to supervise the elimination of the British colonial empire.
She was able to adjust to the reality of the imperial decline, and then transform that imperial decline as if to a good thing, something common that people can be part of and wanted to be part of. That is the Commonwealth.
To some Africans, the British colonial rule is synonymous with exploitation. They blame the Queen, the representative of the British interests, for the atrocities during that period.
I personally will not forget that I was incarcerated for 7 years. I cannot forget I was put together with my father. I cannot forget I left my children for 7 years without food, without education. That I will never forget.
But with territorial colonialism now decades gone, memories of the wrongs of British rule in Africa are fading.
She was many things to many people. To the colonial subjects, at the time of colonialism, she was a symbol of the evil that was colonialism. With independence, she was able to transform herself to a likable person. And as a person, she was likable.
Queen Elizabeth was widely admired and seen as a role model by many on the continent.
The legacy she's left will really keep her name deeply rooted in the hearts of generations to come.
For me, it's just sad. I can't really say I take it personally, but I mean, it's sad for people around the world and especially for England.
Never known any other ruler last that long. So for this now to have happened, well, it only means that every man has an end.
Analysts say Queen Elizabeth's biggest legacy is the creation of the Commonwealth. And with the death of the Queen, the future of that legacy now lies with the new king, King Charles III. Juma Majanga for VOA News, Nairobi.
Rising from humble beginnings, William Ruto is Kenya's new president. His inauguration was attended by heads of state from across Africa, members of the diplomatic corps, and hundreds of thousands of Kenyans.
I, William Samoei Ruto, in full realization of the high calling I assume as President
of Kenya
of the Republic of Kenya,
do swear
that I will be faithful
and
bear true allegiance to the Republic of Kenya,
and that I will protect
and uphold the sovereignty, integrity, and dignity of the people of Kenya. So help me God.
On his first day in office Wednesday, President Ruto presided over the swearing-in of 6 new judges, fulfilling a promise he made as he took the oath of office to strengthen Kenya's judicial system. As Ruto takes over the reins of power, he is faced with a daunting challenge to fix Kenya's shattered economy. Joy Mdivo, the executive director of the East Africa Center for Law and Justice, addresses the challenge the president faces after inheriting an $83 billion debt from his predecessor, Uhuru Kenyatta.
I don't think it is possible to talk about clearing the debt. I think what we can hope for realistically is a management of the debt, such that the repayments are not to a level that they cripple the rest of the economy, and that we still have some leeway to have development going on and to have maybe even some leftover for saving. So he was having a discussion about increasing our saving from the current 7% of GDP to a lot more, because as he was quoting scripture and saying a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. And he says right now the inheritance we're leaving our children's children is debt. And he wants to get Kenya to a level where we're living within our means and we become a net producer rather than a net consumer. And to also encourage, because the Hustler Nation narrative has been everybody must work and work must pay. So it's not a socialist system. So we're expecting also the citizenry to put in the work to generate the wealth that is going to lift the country from the bottom up. There goes his mantra again. And it's one of those things that inspires everybody to dig in their efforts to raise this up. So the words of our national anthem that says everybody needs to come together, to pull together in a bond united, to build this nation together. And that is the call of the Hustler Nation. And I expect he's going to say, you know what, we need more people in the tax bracket. So even those in the informal sector, find ways of formalizing the grey economy, find ways of getting more people participating in contributing to the national coffers. That way, you don't need to borrow as much as you did. And even when you're borrowing, to borrow smart, rather than the concessionary loans that are very high in the repayments, look for more grants and more easier loans that are easier to pay with a less interest rate, because that's what has done Kenya in. So eradicate debt, I don't think that's even possible, but manage it better, I think so. Generate more income internally, most definitely.
Joy Mdivo is the executive director of the East Africa Center for Law and Justice. The ongoing conflict in Ethiopia between the government and the rebel group in the Oromo region, the Oromo Liberation Army, is receiving little attention as the civil war in the north with Tigray intensifies. A series of violent attacks this year are underscoring growing ethnic tensions between ethnic Oromo and ethnic Amhara that threatens to become a second front in the country's war. Henry Wilkins reports from Shewarobit, Ethiopia.
Sembete, a town within the Oromo special zone of the Amhara region, is still reeling. In June, the villages surrounding it saw 3 days of fighting between Amhara militias, or the Fano, and Oromo militias associated with the Oromo Liberation Army, or the OLA. When VOA visited in August, local officials, security forces and community leaders were meeting at the local government office to discuss how to stop any further violence.
The current conflict happens here because of extremist philosophies spreading. There are forces at work that don't want peace here. The conflict in the area is not new, however. It has been happening for a long time. But the community solved it without outside intervention in the past.
36 kilometers south of Sembete, the town of Shewarobit has also been experiencing increased violence between ethnic Oromos and ethnic Amharas in recent months. Local officials and residents told VOA the violence is escalating here too. They say it is due to increased OLA propaganda and recruitment. The OLA, which the government has designated as a terrorist group, are militant ethnic Oromos that splintered away in 2018 from the Oromo Liberation Front, a political organisation. The OLA says it seeks more prominence for the region within Ethiopia's federal system.
If one person on the ethnic Oromo side was killed in a dispute, one person from the ethnic Amhara side was killed in retaliation, and that was the end of it. This time it is different, because the OLA has become involved. For the first time, heavy weapons are being used in conflicts too.
Hundreds of ethnic Oromos and ethnic Amharas have been killed in massacres by the Oromo and Amhara militias since the beginning of the year, authorities and activists say. But rights groups say all sides in the conflict are responsible for human rights abuses. The OLA, for its part, blames the violence on ethnic Amhara militias and the federal government. A recent OLA statement said the central government is facing insurmountable pressure from all corners and is now brewing discord to turn communities against each other and create more conflict. The government blamed the OLA for the ongoing conflict. Analysts say the escalating conflict is another threat to the stability of the country and the region. David Del Conte is an independent consultant and an expert on Ethiopia.
Whether the conflict continues in Oromia, the more chances you have to further destabilize the federal government and antagonize relationships between neighboring regional states. And that's bad for Ethiopia, that's bad for the region. And most certainly and foremost, it's really bad for the civilian population.
Del Conte said the federal government's response to the conflict in Tigray threatens peace in the Oromia region. The response in Tigray includes a blockade that has stopped humanitarian aid, banking and telecommunications.
The Oromo population is watching Tigray very closely and how the federal government and other regional states are comporting themselves in Tigray. This will directly affect the relationship that Oromia has with the federal government.
Meanwhile, the violence in Shura-Rabit has claimed its latest victim, the town's mayor. On September 1st, the mayor was killed by gunmen as he got out of his car to enter his home. The city's communication bureau told local news. It is unclear who carried out the assassination. Henry Wilkins for VOA News, Shura-Rabit, Ethiopia.
It's Africa Fashion Week in New York City, the largest annual fashion event in the United States that brings together African designers from across the continent, Europe, and the world to showcase their creations. For more insight, Paul Ndiho spoke to Joram Muzira, the CEO and founder of Joram Model Management.
Joram Muzira, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.
It's Africa Fashion Week in New York. You are currently in New York. Tell us a little bit about what you're looking forward to doing this week.
I'm super excited to be in New York, and I'm here for New York Fashion Week because we do have 10 girls that are in town, and they're working major multiple shows. Give them more support to be there and just watch everything unfold as they represent motherland Africa, and at the same time as they try their level best to wave the flags of the different countries that they come from in Africa.
What are you looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to seeing more models of color, more diversity, more inclusiveness, and above all, I'm also looking forward to seeing African designers own their space in these major different spaces that are happening right now in New York Fashion Week.
How did you get into this space?
I got into this space 10 years ago when I started my company, which is JMM. That's Joram Model Management, a model company that is based in Uganda, but it's global because it represents different types of models. And we are mother agents at the moment, representing over 25 models that are working in New York, in Paris, London, Milan. So 10 years ago, I had a dream of being a fashion model, but it never worked out for me. But I'm super happy that I followed my passion, my path, my dedication, my zeal, my persistence, and look at us. 10 years later, we are seeing African models taking up spaces. We are seeing African models taking off.
What does it take to sort of build a model? What does it take to bring them up to that level where they can compete internationally?
I would say it takes a lot. It takes a village. It's not like a one-man's army whereby, when you get someone, you're just gonna, whatever, push them just along. It's like a whole village. It's an ecosystem whereby the designers are involved, the stylists are involved, the photographers are involved. There's so much. So that is why every time we discover or scout models, we take them through a series of developments. And to be an international model, you can't just work in one market. You can't. The biggest markets right now are New York, Paris, London, and Milan. Those four. Of course, there's like subsidiary markets like whatever, Spain, there's Germany, but the top 4 are the ones that literally rule the world. So that is why every time we are grooming, developing models and, placing them internationally, we're always looking at those top 4 markets.
How about Africa? You just talked about the 4 major markets, but Africa is up and upcoming. You have a lot of serious designers are coming from the continent. The models that you're talking about are coming from the continent.
We don't have the resources that all these major global fashion capitals of the world do have. Because, man, when you come to New York, like, fashion here is billions and billions and billions of dollars. Same thing with Paris, with Milano, with London. But in Africa, it's just kicking off. Let's be realistic. The markets that are doing, the markets that I would say are doing great are, South Africa. South Africa is doing really, really, really well. At the end of the day, we also have to look at it in a business angle. So I believe the more African models take over here, the movement will absolutely drift towards Africa.
You are arguably one of the leading headhunter. You are on the continent trying to recruit girls from all over the place. Are you at liberty maybe to share some of the big names that you've been able to discover and bring, for example, to the New York Fashion Week?
We've changed the narrative. Parents now believe in it, and at the moment, we do have 25 names that are working internationally. The ones that we are affiliated to, the ones that we've discovered, the ones that we've worked with. All these girls putting up their level best to represent Africa to the fullest is such a dream.
Thank you so much for your time.
I absolutely love this interview.
That was Paul Ndeho speaking to Joram Muzira, CEO and founder of Joram Model Management. We'll be right back.
On the next Straight Talk Africa, we'll examine the mixed legacy of Queen Elizabeth in Africa. She was the longest-serving monarch in British history. Even though the British Empire dwindled, it left an indelible colonial imprint on the African continent. We'll look at what lies ahead for Britain's new King, Charles III. Be sure to join me, Heidi Adams, on the next Straight Talk Africa.
In other African news, Gambian commercial drivers vowed to continue striking amid high fuel prices and toll charges along the Senegal-Gambia bridge. The government says it's working to meet demands. French officials say a former top Malian official, Mustafa Ben Barka, was briefly held in Paris after the ruling junta in Bamako issued an international arrest warrant. And Nigeria plans to commercialize gas banned from its oil field at an advanced stage now and is expected to cut 15 million tons of carbon emissions from the atmosphere. It's time for our tech segment, and joining us now is our technology reporter, Paul Ndeho. Hello, Paul.
Thank you, Esther. The gender gap is stuck in STEM fields. Tech Girls, an initiative of the U.S. State Department, Bureau of Education and Culture Affairs, has since 2012 trained more than 393 girls in STEM, providing them access to opportunities and help them to advance their skills, pursue their dreams. For more, I spoke to Jennifer Batamuriza, CEO and founder of Rwa Tech Hub. She led a team of girls from Rwanda to this year's Skills Development Workshop here in the United States. Jennifer Batamuriza, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you, Paul.
You recently led a team of younger techies from Rwanda. Let's start there. What were you guys doing in the United States?
Came for a program. It's called Tech Girls Program, which is funded by the U.S. Department of State. It's an exchange program for the girls who are between 13 and 17 years old. So me, as the local engagement coordinator for Tech Girls in Rwanda, I had to accompany the girls to meet other 135 girls from 35 countries in 4 regions. So the girls went to a boot camp in Virginia Tech University, where they were given hands-on skills on tech. They were mentored, they were inspired by tech women from the United States. The girls were given hands-on skills. They met with people from the industry, so there was job shadow for the girls. They learned a lot, they exchanged culture. The girls learned about leadership skills and many other skills. And then from there, they had to come back to the Washington, D.C., where we had to go to the US Department of State where we were celebrating. So it was a capstone for the Tech Girls program. And then we came back. Now the girls are working on the project, on the tech projects. After gaining the skills, they're working on the tech projects to solve the problem in our country, in our society.
Jennifer, how did these girls get selected? There must be 1 million girls in Rwanda doing similar things.
In Rwanda, 134 girls applied, and they had to go through selection process whereby I, as the local engagement coordinator with the US Embassy in Rwanda, we had to take the girls through all the process. So they did interviews, and then the 4 girls were the outstanding girls. So that's why they were selected.
What does it take to be a tech girl?
The girl just needs to be interested, have that passion for tech. Another thing is the girl should be between 13 and 17 years old, studying in high school. So those are the only criteria that were used to select the girls.
If you're to rate this program, how would you rate the program?
It's a life-changing experience for the girls. They really learned a lot. The girls, I mean, when you talk to them now, they tell you that they've been really transformed by the program.
When you talk about the training itself, are you at liberty to share some of like the trainings that went on, the languages that these girls were coding in?
They learned Python programming, but they also got to learn about electrical circuits because they have to also use some electronic devices. And then afterwards, they do some coding, the Python programming codes.
You've also had an opportunity to train a lot of young people. What has surprised you the most?
Sometimes you look at people, the girls, and you think, oh, maybe they are maybe they have more skills in tech. And then when you start maybe training them, you find that they didn't have more skills in tech. And I mean, that one surprised me because sometimes when you meet them, like you feel like they really know how to, especially coding. But when you start, that's when you see that most of the things they don't know. But after getting trained, the girls become the best. So we've seen many of the girls who are out here now creating websites. Yeah.
What does it take? Can anybody really get into that space and learn how to code and do it?
What I can tell you, Paul, is that anyone can code. Anyone can code. So I've experienced that. So while training, especially for creating websites, so we also code those web applications. We also do some coding. So I've had people who have no background in mathematics, but they can write codes. Coding is easy, just that, the problem is mindset, because many people just believe in that and they haven't tried it yet. But for people who are in there, we find it very, very easy.
Jennifer, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Paul.
Jennifer Batamuriza is the CEO and founder of Ra Tech Hub based in Kigali, Rwanda. That's today's Tech Report. Back to you, Esther.
And thank you very much, Paul. And thank you, viewers, for joining us live on Africa 54. Have a great evening.